There have been 44 executions in the United States this year. Last year, and all of last year, there were 25 executions. There were 44 so far this year. We've got 2 scheduled this week here in Tennessee and also in Florida tomorrow, and then next week in Georgia and in Florida again, which would make Florida having 19 executions in the whole year. I think Tennessee has had 18 or 19 executions in its current era history of the death penalty. That's going to make it 48 executions for the year. A pretty significant spike, but it's catching up. It's not that the death penalty is getting worse, it's that they're catching up. Because in fact, public opinion on the death penalty has been the least favored as it has been in 50 years. When you invite people to answer, how do you support the death penalty, yes or no, it's now, according to Gallup, about 52%. That's the lowest in 50 years. And when you add, would you prefer death by incarceration, what you get is a vast majority supporting the alternative to the death penalty, which is death by incarceration, also known as life without the possibility of parole. So we don't need the death penalty to be safe for people who've done awful crimes or to hold them accountable. We know that we can do that because that's what we do in the vast majority of cases. Lastly, I want to say that we are here in support of anybody that wants to stand up against the death penalty. And I want to invite now for you to hear from Kevin Riggs and Dan Mann, and then a closing thought from Suzanne Bosler, who is a member of the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, a group led by murder victim family members who oppose the death penalty.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Riggs. I pastor Franklin Community Church in Franklin, Tennessee, and been an advocate against the death penalty for quite some time now. We are here today to also present a letter to Governor Lee, where the guys on death row several years ago have started asking for the governor to come and pray with them, and to date the governor has not chosen to do so. So we're asking for mercy for Harold Nichols, whose execution is scheduled for Thursday. But you know, Tennessee has always had a difficult relationship with the death penalty. We haven't executed people at the same rate as other states, and this goes all the way back to the frontier days. The first governor of Tennessee tried to get rid of capital punishment. The very first governor of our state saw that there was something wrong with it and wanted to get rid of it. And then another governor actually gave all the guys on death row clemency back in the 60s, I think it was. And since 1976, when capital punishment became acceptable again, the state of Tennessee has only executed 18 or 19 people in all that time. And so there seems to be this internal conscience of our state that says that there's something wrong with the death penalty and we shouldn't do it. So since 76, 18 or 19 people have been executed. But unfortunately, 9 of those, counting this week's execution if it's not stayed, 9 of the executions of those 18 or 19 would have happened since 2018. And so for some reason, a state that has had this internal conflict with the death penalty now is ramping up and trying to execute more and more. There are already 4 executions scheduled for next year. And so I think it's time to call on the legislatures, the governor, and just the people of Tennessee to say, our history shows us that we do not accept this, and it's time to stop the death penalty altogether.
Can we get him back over the mic? Say and spell your name for us and knows who you're with.
Yeah, it's Kevin Riggs, Kevinriggs, and it's Franklin Community Church in Franklin, Tennessee. Pastor, yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I mentioned that earlier.
I'm Suzanne Bosler, S-U-E, capital Z as in zebra, A-N-N, Bosler, B-O-S-L-E-R. I'm a co-founder of Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, which is exactly what it sounds like. We go around the world to share with people our stories and to hopefully give people information to help us abolish the death penalty. On December 22nd, 1986, I watched my father get stabbed to death, but I was also stabbed, left for dead. But I worked the next 10 and a half years to get the man who did it off a death row and in for life. I will continue to work, especially right now here. We came here specifically for Harold Nichols, and we want to stay because we want him to live. It is not right for America to torture and kill these people. It's the same as execution, killing. We cannot do that. Why kill people who kill people to show us Americans that killing people is wrong?
Any questions? Hand is up. Share at this time.
I wouldn't mind asking you about your father, being such a tragic incident. I'm just you can explain why you chose not to go for the death penalty against him.
Yes, well, the reason I'm against the death penalty is because 8 years before it happened, my father said to me, if anyone were ever to murder or kill you, I would still not want that person to get the death penalty. But my father was also a minister with Church of the Brethren. And we lived in the parsonage next to the church, which we always had people coming for help. This man came in for money and drugs. But I know if I were gone and my dad was here, he would have done the same exact thing. I refuse to be like the person who killed my father, because if I were going to help the governor in my state of Florida to kill him, I would be just like him. I would be a murderer too, and I refuse to be like that.
You guys got a lot of names this time.
Say again?
You got a lot of names on the petition this time.
Yes.
You guys, back in August when we went upstairs and all that. What are you hoping for today? Does the number of names on the signature help, or like what do you?
Well, it's really, what we know is that, half the people in Tennessee easily don't support executions. If you give them the opportunity to understand the issue and ask them in a way that helps them understand the issue. We believe that our petitions are representative of everybody who opposes the death penalty. So whether it's 1,000 or 5,000 or 500,000, we're here to talk to the governor and say you don't have to do this. And it's a vehicle for us to carry them in.
I may have misheard you with all the noise. Did you say you had support all over the world or just all over the country?
All over the world. People, and also people have been, excuse me, we've been generating phone calls and emails and people going on the governor's webpage to send letters as well from anywhere in the world who wants to oppose this. Amnesty International has its own action out. The Catholic Mobilizing Network has its own action out. Of course, Tennesseans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty have their action out. Everybody who is concerned about this issue is raising awareness and just trying to make sure that it's not lost in the chaos of all the other things that are happening in the world today, that we're going to take a defenseless prisoner and tie him down and kill him when we don't need to.
Do you think it would be more effective if it was 20, 30,000 Tennesseans? More than just people around the world?
What we've been encouraging Tennesseans to do in particular is write direct letters. We invite them to sign a petition too, but we know for a fact that the governor is hearing from people who live in Tennessee, and a lot of them. The faith community, people have been praying all weekend. People are going to be tolling their bells on Thursday morning. But the hard fact is that, as you know, most people get their news and their information from social media and not from the big news stations anymore. And so it's a lot harder to reach people than it was 20 years ago. So a lot of people are just unaware that this is even happening. And that's our biggest challenge, is reaching people out to know this is what the government's doing in our name, and we need to stand up and say we don't want it.
What do you think would it take to, it's law that this is legal. What would you think? What's it going to take to change the law? Instead of having to come every time there's an execution, what would it take?
What it takes is for legislators, lawmakers, policymakers to look at this issue as a public policy issue rather than something to grandstand on or to say, I'm tough on crime, therefore I'm going to execute people. And what I mean by that is we've abolished the death penalty in New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, Colorado, Virginia. And Delaware, Washington State, New York State, there's now 23 states that don't have the death penalty at all. Some never did in the current era, but in the states where it did, it was in helping legislators know this is a failed public policy. We have carved into the face of the U.S. Supreme Court building the words equal justice under law. And anybody who's studied this issue understands that we don't have equal justice under law. So we also know that it's a huge waste of tax dollars. We're spending way more money to try to kill somebody than what we could be spending to throw away the key and do better for victim family members, for the survivors of murder victims. What if we were to put these resources into better services for survivors, better preventions? You know, the thing about Harold Nichols is he was beaten as a child. He was in an abusive home, and we need to find people like that who, before they fall through the cracks and end up on a path towards murder. And if we put more resources into that sort of thing, I think more people would prefer that. And I think legislators would understand that's a better way to do it.
Can I try to answer that question?
Of course.
The question of what's it going to take to stop it? Well, ultimately, what it takes to stop capital punishment in Tennessee is a constitutional change to our state, which is extremely complicated to do. But a simpler way to do that is, first of all, and there's been precedent for this, Governor Lee could grant clemency to everyone on death row. That doesn't mean they go free. It just means their sentence is commuted to life in prison, and he could do that today. Or there have been other states where the state legislature has just kind of had a handshake agreement that they would not ask for the death penalty anymore. And so in essence, the death penalty stops without having to go through a constitutional change, and because there's another way to do justice. As a follower of Jesus, I believe wholly that there's another way to do justice, and that's restorative justice, where the perpetrator of the crime has to be disciplined, obviously, but also to bring about healing for the victims and the victim's family and the community in which the crime was committed. That's restorative justice, and that's the way of Jesus. But the death penalty could stop today by granting everyone clemency on death row and just letting them serve out their time in prison, or by just the legislation saying, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore, so we're not going to, we'll direct the Attorney General not to pursue capital punishment cases. And that could stop immediately.
And if you don't mind maybe addressing this one again, since you were directly. So there are victims' families that want to see this, that fight to make sure this happens. What would you say to them to try to sway them wanting that kind of what they call justice?
That's a very good question, because since I started this work 39 years ago, we meet people all over the world that are victims just like me, but want the death penalty. And that's why we're called Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, is that we understand that each person has a different view and different understanding of the death penalty, and they think that if they help the government execute the one that killed their loved one, that they would have closure. And we've met these people during, and we met them after, and not one of them has had closure or healing. They're still mad at the person, but the person's not there anymore, so they have no place for their anger to go. It goes right back into themselves. So all these people are learning on their own. We feel it's right for us not to downsize them or tell them you're wrong. We just try to stay with them and surround them and help them understand our stories and show them we're examples that it does help and heal us. Because it took me 5.5 years to forgive this man, and at the beginning of not forgiving him, I was a mess. But when I was on the stand, I pointed to James and I said, James, I forgive you whether you accept it or not. And it was after that moment, I was 100% forgiveness. It wasn't just words, it was from my soul, and I had more energy and power to save his life and go on with my life and heal till I take my last breath. So we try to educate them, to show them that is not right, but we still stand behind and support them as they're healing and what they went through. Because if the government, when they sign that paper for execution, they're causing more victims to be in the system. So now it's not just my side that's a victim, it's the side of Nichols that is victims too. So we're bringing more victims into the system that we already have enough. So we're not doing any better. And not only that, is that there's third world countries that don't have the death penalty. And we're acting in 2025 as barbaric, torturous people. It has not worked, it will never work, and we will continue to do what we do until it is abolished.
Just on that point also, we're staying while we're in Nashville at the Family Reconciliation Center, which is a place that provides housing and support to the families of people visiting prisoners. So last night we spent with Harold's sister and brother-in-law, and they're people too, and now they're being turned into murder victim families. Last thing I want to say is yesterday, as we do before each execution, on the Sunday before each execution, we all walked from Riverbend Correctional to here in a symbolic march to deliver the letter that we're going to deliver from the prisoners, as well as the petitions. So if you want any images or video from that, we have that, but also you can mark your calendar by it. There's 4 executions scheduled in Tennessee in 2026. On the Sunday before each, we'll be walking. Anybody need a one-on-one before we go in?
No, I was just going to try to get showing y'all there with your signs real quick. I know y'all ready to go in.
Thank you all for showing up. We do appreciate it. We know it's cold.
Here's for you to take a picture of my card for information if you need it. It's okay. And if you Google my name, you'll see a lot more of my story that I didn't talk about.
Thank you.
So did they want to execute the man that killed your dad?
They did, but on June 13th, 97, I was able to get him off death row and in for life. But at the end, they would not listen to me the whole 10.5 years. So the last appeal, I had to hire my own lawyer because right before I testified the last time, the judge says I'm not allowed to say my opinion about the death penalty. But when they brought the jurors in, the prosecutor asked me my name, my address, and my occupation,